A man at war with himself places a deficit upon his focus. He is impatient, emotional, easily surprised. A man at one with himself has a clearer mind, sharper instincts. That man is ready to win. That man is ready to progress.
As I walked the camp recently, I got talking to another hunter. His mastery of his weapon was unmatched, and he could bring down any monster he was assigned to hunt. But when he returned home, he was vexed by troubling thoughts, shame, grief, worry, and above all, he spoke of the sense of a war raging within, of internal conflict. In the hunt, he had found victory, but in his heart, he found none. He conquered monster after monster, but could not conquer himself. He created peace for the people, but he enjoyed none of his own. He was desperate for a path to peace. This is what I told him. When a monster becomes a problem, there are three basic solutions. If one is a civilian, one simply flees. One gets away from it. If one is a hunter, one can either make it go away by repelling or slaying the monster, or capture it so that, while still present, its damaging effects cannot reach anyone. Civilians make contingencies to escape, and as hunters, we train our skills in battle to defeat them. We simply acquire the means to achieve flight, victory, or control, and that is the whole of the matter. Most material problems are like this. If hunger is our issue, we eat food to make it go away. If heat is the issue, we flee from it into the shade. If we are ill, we apply the medicine. And indeed, if there is conflict, we need simply destroy one or more of those involved, or force the two parties to cease, else flee the conflict. However, problems of the soul are different. Our attempt to use these same methods on them not only fails to solve the problem, but actually is the cause of much of our suffering. To try and flee from, control, or destroy the things that harm you from within is the best way to ensure that they continue to harm you. If you try not to think certain thoughts and feelings, they will come to mind more often, intruding on or even taking over your mind. If you try to brutally deny the thoughts and feelings, this may make them go away for a short time, but they shall only grow worse in the dark. And if you try to ignore them by turning away, or by covering them over with worldly pleasures, this again shall not help you, as they return the moment the distraction is done, or simmer quietly beneath the surface, all while your methods of distraction weaken with time. To solve the problems of the soul, you must not only take a different approach, but the exact opposite approach. Instead of trying to destroy your pain, you must allow it to exist. Instead of trying to control your thoughts, you must allow them to be the way that they are. Instead of trying to turn away from your suffering, you must turn toward it. Examine it. Look it straight in the eye. But why is this? Why would the internal realm work so differently to the outside? Whether we speak of things or living beings' bodies, the outside is a realm of objects. This is why we call it objective. We can simply destroy objects and kill our enemies, move them or ourselves away, or find a way to control them. But the realm of the soul is not one of objects in space. You cannot willfully destroy yourself or control yourself, and you most certainly cannot run away from yourself, at least not directly. You can lead yourself into destruction and fragmentation, and you can determine the destiny of your character, but direct attempts to intervene with these ends in mind do not work, particularly not when dealing with specifics. You cannot erase memories at will, you cannot extinguish aspects of your spirit, nor can you alter them, and it would not even make sense to speak of running away from them. Wherever you go, there you are. No, the soul is not a battlefield. It is the realm of understanding. That is to say, that the way of the soul is not of things and forces to push them around, but an understanding of the nature of the world, both rational and spiritual. It is the domain of ideas, patterns, and intentions, all connected by and gaining life from relations and reasons. Thus, while a physical ailment demands a physical cure, the spiritual ailment demands a spiritual cure. To cure your emotional distress of any sort, but particularly in a conflict, you must attempt to correct your understanding. You cannot destroy a memory, but you can come to view it differently. You cannot change your beliefs, but you can examine how you came to hold them, or how you ought to come to believe anything. You cannot control your emotions, but you can listen to them and hear their logic. With what we know so far, now we may ask the question, what then is the nature of internal turmoil in particular? Well, given that we must correct our understanding, it shall be necessary to first understand the nature of misunderstanding. Inner conflict derives from a contradiction in the views that give rise to one's emotions, whether it concerns what one thinks is good and bad, or whether it concerns truth and falsehood. When the contradiction concerns good and bad, we may make a number of mistakes. Our views may imply that something is both good and not good at the same time. They may imply something is bad and not bad at the same time. They may imply something is both good and bad at the same time. Or they may imply that one thing is both better and worse than another. For example, imagine a young adult who has come of age to leave home. His mother and father have mistreated him horrendously, and finally he has the chance to leave. However, he does still love his parents, and they have had many happy memories together as well. He becomes extremely distressed, unable to make a decision. But why does this inability to make a decision distress him? Because he has not yet resolved the contradiction in his soul. He sees leaving his parents behind as both good and bad at the same time. And likewise with staying. To leave is good because the abuse shall cease, but it is bad because he will lose the good times he has with them and miss them. Alternatively, it may concern truth and falsehood. Our views may posit something as right when it is impossible, impractical, or improbable, or it may posit something as wrong when it is necessary or inevitable. In other words, our ideas about what ought to be may contradict our understanding of what is or isn't, can or cannot be, and must or must not be. An example of this would be someone racked with guilt about the past. Although there may be other reasons, they may spend all day wishing that they could undo that past, undo their mistakes. This, of course, is completely impossible. Their recognition of the truth of the matter, that they can never undo their wrongdoing, contradicts with their evaluation of the matter, that what they did was wrong, or more accurately, that it would be good to try to undo their wrongdoing. The contradiction arises because it is as if one part of them believes that it is possible, urging them to act, while the other recognizes the impossibility of doing so. Now that we understand the nature of internal conflict, the question remains, how do we resolve it? Given that our suffering is based on our views on things, and they are not affected by mere willpower, our next question must be, where do such views come from? And also, therefore, and more importantly, how can they change? This understanding will open the way. The answer is learning. The soul is an engine of learning. We cannot control our specific views, but we can choose to engage in actions that promote our learning or unlearning and direct our awareness. But to simply speak a word like learning is not of any help. And so, I shall explain two aspects of learning, each providing its own path. The first is reason. When we understand things, we grasp their pattern, their logic. This is reason. When there is a fault in logic, similarly, we bring our reason to fix it. Thus, we need only consider the logic of our feelings and then apply our reason to process them, although this may make it seem a simpler matter than it is. You must understand deeply why you feel the way that you do, and that goes doubly so when we are dealing with internal conflict. To apply reason to seek the betterment of the soul is the way of contemplation. We can begin with this by asking ourselves the proper questions. Why do I feel bad about this? What exactly do I consider good and bad? Putting special focus on the bad, as this is the primary source of suffering. Then, once you have determined this, you ask why you consider it so. When you have answered, ask why again and again. Keep doing this, delving deeper and deeper. This alone may reveal what needs to be learned. Sometimes, developing a straightforward understanding of the situation makes the solution very obvious. Sometimes, though, the nature of our suffering requires something further still. Often, engaging in such questioning and demanding answers can begin to be a corrosive attempt to control, and thus it is important to let your mind and spirit speak to you. You must at times listen to your inner world, as if it were another person. Do not presume to know already or to easily come to an answer. Contemplation done well often becomes a dialogue with oneself. This is quite important to consider thoroughly. This need to listen points to a flaw in the approach of contemplation, however. Often, our problem is in how we are looking at the situation, and when we bring our reason to a matter, this way of looking at things will not simply vanish. The perspective that causes your suffering often remains present in your attempt to resolve it, and at times this creates complex spiritual knots that are difficult to untangle. Though contemplation still helps tremendously, even when we attempt to listen with openness, this problem is still very likely to come into play. For example, the fact that we are approaching the situation with the intent to end our suffering often results in a subtle intention to control and destroy, Again, even despite our deliberate attempts to avoid such thinking. Thankfully, there is a second path. We cannot, of course, learn solely by thinking. We do not even primarily learn by thinking. This other aspect of learning is, indeed, the first act of learning. So says a great master of the New World, "The roots of knowledge and wisdom are in observation." Before we can grasp any pattern, any logic, we must have something from which to derive them. Recall what I said about how, when we contemplate, we must not presume to know the answers and must remain open. When we contemplate, when we seek to interpret and reason, it is nearly, or maybe even fully, impossible not to assume something, even if we can assume less in some situations than in others. To interpret and understand, a perspective must be taken, and that perspective assumes some things to be true or good. Thus, when we are too tangled up in assumptions, when we are completely stuck, we can return to simple observation to drop these assumptions and simply see. We cease approaching our soul like the hunter and instead become the field researcher. There is nothing to slay, capture, or control, not even a little bit. The remnants of these from contemplation are cast aside. All that remains is to witness. This may to some sound like the cessation of understanding. After all, if we do not interpret, how do we understand? As I said, the soul is an engine of learning. If you commit to observe, without assumption, without interpretation, without desire for any outcome, your soul shall learn regardless. It is often the case that to attain the way, we must forget the way. See how your body feels when you are upset. Find the concrete sensations of your emotion. Look closely at it. Do not flee, or turn away, or seek to control. Just look, purely and completely. Aim to observe in exquisite detail what it is like without thinking about it, and let the attendant thoughts float in and out as you do so, observed but neither grasped nor pushed away. This is the way, not of reason, but of insight. This is the way, not of the thinkers of the West and their syllogisms, but the silent wisdom of the Buddha in the East. And so, if you seek to master the ways of observation of the soul, you shall find them called mindfulness and meditation, as spoken of by him. Nothing brings greater peace than this path, followed through to its end. If your soul is in turmoil, you cannot protect the people in your role as a hunter. What's more, our purpose as hunters is to preserve life, and so it is important that life be worth living. If you do not take care of your soul, if you never find peace within as you create it without for others, then you are not ultimately following the true way of the hunter. So remember, the problems of the soul are not solved with control, destruction, or escape like external problems are. This is because the problems of the soul are caused by our views on things. Thus, problems of the soul are corrected by correcting our views. We can correct our views with contemplation, applying reason to consider the logic of our emotions, and finding where they fail to make sense. Or we can correct them via meditation, applying mindfulness to observe without thought, without perspective, and without interpretation. May you quiet the monsters within, my fellow hunters. Safety and peace be upon you. Thanks for watching to the end. This video was directly inspired by a comment on my previous video. If you comment your thoughts down below, you may inspire one too. You can also support me by liking the video, and if you want to see more, you can subscribe to the channel or watch other entries in the Way of the Hunter series.